Good morning, my dear students. In the previous class, we have studied about the medieval India and political transitions. In this lessons, we have studied about the Rajput dynasties and their contributions to the India. Okay, in this class, we are going to study about the remaining part of this lesson called the arrival of Turks and afterwards Delhi Sultanates here. And we have known that here, how did the Turks arrive to India? See, by defeating the Rajput kingdoms, by defeating the small Rajput kingdoms, they have established their empire in India here. And also, they belonged to the Mongolia tribe. Which tribe? They belonged to the Mongolia tribe here. And later, Alaptagin, who belonged to this Mongolia tribe, he established his empire in the year 1963 CE in Ghazni of Afghanistan here. So later, in the year 1999, Muhammad Ghazni ascended the throne after him, and he invaded on India 17 times here. So during that time, he destroyed many of the temples. So one of the famous temple called here Somanatha temple and the temples of Saurashtra here. And also, he invaded on Rajput kingdoms here, and he succeeded in them. Because of that, which reason is nothing but due to the political and military weakness of the Rajputs caused for his success in the invasions here. And later him here, the Muhammad Ghori, who established a Shanstani dynasty in Ghor of Afghanistan here. So he started his dynasty by ending the Ghazni dynasty. He started his which dynasty here? Ghor dynasty here. Okay. And also he sent his brother called Mujahiddin Muhammad to establish Turk rule in India here. Okay. So later, I have already told in the previous class here, Muhammad Ghori invaded on India and he defeated many of the rulers of the Rajputs here. So one of the important is nothing but I have already told the Battle of Tarain first and the Battle of Tarain second here. So that war became between the two important rulers called here Muhammad Ghori and afterwards Prithviraj Chauhan third here. But in the first battle of Tarain, it was happened in the year 1191. But in that war, who defeated means nothing but Muhammad Ghori was defeated by Prithviraj Chauhan. But he went back to his place and afterwards the next year, it means nothing but 1192. Again he invaded on Prithviraj Chauhan, but this time Muhammad Ghori defeated Prithviraj Chauhan here. So these are the highlights of arrival of the Turks. And afterwards, the Muhammad Ghori, which places he won in the India. See, he has appointed his slaves to look after that areas which were won by Muhammad Ghori here. Okay. So later he was got murdered in the way back to his place. Who? Muhammad Ghori. So later these are the highlights of the arrival of the Turks. Next we go to Delhi Sultans. Children, we have known that the Delhi Sultan's period was a great period. And I have already told here, Muhammad Ghori appointed his slaves to look after the places which he was won in India here. And after the departure of Muhammad Ghori, his slaves started their rule in India. So one of his slaves called here Qutbuddin Aybak. He was a slave of Muhammad Ghori, Qutbuddin Aybak here. he established his own dynasty called here Ghulam dynasty. Ghulam dynasty. And during his rule, he laid a strong foundation, okay, for the rule of Delhi sultans here. Okay. And also during his period, he built a Quwat ul Islam mosque in Delhi. Okay, which mosque here? Quwat ul Islam mosque. And also he started building Qutub Minar. He started building Qutub Minar, but unfortunately he could not complete this Qutub Minar, because before the completion of this Qutub Minar he died here. And also he patronized many of the scholars called here Nizami and afterwards Paki Mudabbir in his court. And also the work called here Tajul Masir. Which one? Tajul Masir. See, this work gives information on Aibak here. So if you want to know about the Qutbuddin Aibak here, so we have to read this Tajul Masir, the work called Tajul Masir. So later Qutbuddin Aibak here, his slave called here Iltamash. So Iltamash came to rule here. Also, he was the administrator of Gwalior and became the successor of Aibak. He was the successor of Aibak here. And also, he also conquered many of the places during his rule. When we come to his administrative system, see, he divided his whole kingdom into Iktas. Iktas means nothing but provinces. Iktas means nothing but provinces here. And also for this provinces he has appointed provincial officers called here Iqtadars. So Iqtadars appointed by the Iltamash to look after these provinces. And also Iqtadars means nothing but provincial officers we call here. Why means nothing but to run the administration of the kingdom here. And also he appointed a group of 40 slaves to advise him here. How many slaves here? Group of 40 slaves appointed by him here to advise him. And also he appointed a PM, and after PM is nothing but here Prime Minister and judges to advise him also here. And also he brought gold and afterwards gold and silver coins into circulation, and also he completed the building called here Qutub Minar, which was started by Qutbuddin Aibak. I have already told here it could not completed by the Qutbuddin Aibak, because before the completion of this Qutub Minar he died here. So later his slave called Iltamash, he completed the construction of Qutub Minar here. Okay, then after Iltamash here, his daughter called Razia Sultan. Who? Razia Sultan. See, she was the daughter of Iltamash and she became the successor of him here. So why? Means nothing but because of her incompetent brother called here Ruknuddin Firoz. Her brother Ruknuddin Firoz, he was incompetent. It means nothing but he was unable to rule the kingdom. So because of this reason, his sister called Razia Sultana, she became the successor of whom here? Iltutmish. And she was the first woman to ascend the throne of Delhi here. She was the first woman here to ascend the throne of Delhi. And she earned the title called here Sultan. She earned the title called Sultana here. And also she established her rule from Sindh to Bengal. She established her rule to where here? Sindh to Bengal here. And the provincial officers who were intolerant because of her rule. Okay, but the officers who were appointed by the Iltutmish, provincial officers, they were intolerant because of her rule here, and they revolted against her, and also they killed her, whom? Razia Sultana here. So after Razia Sultana, she called Giyas Uddin Balban, and he was the Amir. He was the Amir-e-Shikar. He was the Amir-e-Shikar during the reign of Razia here. Okay. But after the death of Razia Sultana here, he became Sultan of Delhi here. Okay. And also he faced the attack from Mongolians during his rule, and after his death, he was succeeded by Kaikubad here. But after his death, he was succeeded by whom here? Kaikubad. So after his death, who was succeeded here? He was succeeded by Kaikubad here. But he was also murdered by his own minister. But he was murdered by his own minister. So by this, the slave dynasty came to an end by the death of Kaikubad. He was the last ruler of slave dynasty. He was murdered by his own minister. Okay, by this which dynasty came to an end is nothing but the slave dynasty came to an end, and it gave the way to the establishment of Kilgi Dynasty. So next we are going to learn about Kilgi Dynasty. It came after the slave dynasty. So what was the period of Kilgi Dynasty? Means nothing but 1290 to 1320 CE. It was the period of Kilgi Dynasty. The founder of this dynasty was here Jalaluddin. Who? Jalaluddin was the founder of this dynasty, and he was the man of mercy and soft spoken. As a result of this, what happened is his Sardars became strong and plotted to kill him here. And later, one of the Sardars called here Alauddin. See, Alauddin killed Jalaluddin and became the Sultan of Delhi here. Who became the Sultan of Delhi after Jalaluddin is nothing but Alauddin. Alauddin killed Jalaluddin and became the Sultan of Delhi here. So next we are going to study about Alauddin here. So his full name was Alauddin Khilji. Okay, he was a good warrior and also served as governor and afterwards military general also here. And he invaded many of the places and plundered a lot of wealth. Okay, and when we come to his administrative system, so during his period he has given a good administrative system here. Okay, and when we his reforms also, here we classified into three reforms here. Reforms classified into three administrative reforms. Administrative reforms of the Alauddin Khilji classified into three reforms here. One is here administrative reforms. Another one is military reforms. Last one is market reforms. See, the Alauddin Khilji's reforms classified into here three categories here: administrative reforms and military reforms and also market reforms. So first we come to know about the administrative reforms of Alauddin Khilji. So during his period here, in the administrative reforms, he brought many of the changes here. He abolished the religious endowments here. During his period, he abolished the religious endowments and also inams and lands and a subsidy. Next, he established the intelligence network during his period. Later, he also prohibited alcohol, drugs and dice games in his kingdom. And also he banned the association formation among his Sardars here. And later he appointed revenue officials. Why means nothing but to collect the fixed taxes from the farmers here. So these were the administrative reforms which was brought by the Alauddin Khilji. Next we go to military reforms. Here also he brought many of the changes here. The task of recruiting and training of the soldiers and the supply of the arms and horses were all entrusted to whom here? The defense minister. So later the salary for soldiers, it was dispersed in the form of cash to whom here? To the soldiers. Later a system of records called here Hulia. Which one? The system of records called Hulia was brought into effect in the military reforms. The next one is the process of stamping the horses called here Dhag. Which one? What is the meaning of Dhag? Means nothing but stamping the horses. It is called here Dhag. That also came into effect in the military reforms. So these were the military reforms of Alauddin Khilji. So next we go to here market reforms of Alauddin Khilji. What he brought, which of the changes he brought in this market reforms here. Market, and he created a system for common people to get the basic ingredients at a fair prices here. Okay, what is that? He created a system for what means nothing but common people. For what purpose? To get the basic ingredients called rice, oil and other basic ingredients what we require for our daily life here. That all they get at fair prices here. The next one is established markets to sell horses and slaves here. And also he established the markets. Why means nothing but to sell the horses and slaves also here. And also he appointed higher officials called Shahin-i-Mandi. What here? Shahin-i-Mandi to regulate the markets here. So why he appointed that officials means nothing but to run the markets or to regulate the markets. He appointed that officials here. And later severe punishments also accorded whom here? The cheaters here. So in the markets means nothing but we are going to see the cheatings also here. But he brought the reform called here punishments, severe punishments for the cheaters in the market reforms. So these were the reforms brought into exist by the Alauddin Khilji. So later his son called here Qutbuddin Mubarak. His son name was here Qutbuddin. See, Qutbuddin Mubarak. So he was murdered by his soldier called here Khusro. Khusro. Who was Khusro here? He was the soldier. He was a soldier in the army of Qutbuddin Mubarak here. See, he was killed by Khusro here. Later, he was killed. Later, Khusro was killed by whom here? Ghazi Malik. Who killed Khusro here? He was killed by Ghazi Malik. And also we call him here Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Ghazi Malik and Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq both are same here. See, Khusro was killed by Ghazi Malik, or we can call him Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. By killing Khusro here, he started his own dynasty called here Tughlaq Dynasty. Okay, so Kilgi Dynasty, after the death of Khusro here, Kilgi Dynasty ended, and Ghazi Malik or Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq started his own dynasty called here Tughlaq Dynasty. So we are going to study about now Tughlaq Dynasty. Which dynasty? Tughlaq Dynasty. The period of Tughlaq Dynasty was 1322 1399. It was the period of Tughlaq Dynasty. Then who was the founder of this Tughlaq Dynasty? Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq was the founder of this dynasty. So during his period also he brought many of the administrative policies in the kingdom here. So which were that policies means nothing but, see, he strengthened the borders to prevent the Mongol invasions here. So what was his administrative policies nothing but, he strengthened the borders. Why means nothing but to prevent the Mongolian invasions here. Next, he built irrigational canals. Why is nothing but the farmers should get the benefits from that irrigational canals here. So because of that reasons, to help the farmers, he brought and he built here irrigation canals here. And also he lowered the taxes. So by which taxes here the farmers were getting burdened here. So because of that reasons here, he lowered the taxes. And also he established a postal system consisting of horsemen and runners here. What he established here? He established the postal system also during this period. And also he built the city called here, or the fort called here Tughlaqabad. Which fort here? Tughlaqabad. Built near Delhi. Who built this one is nothing but Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq built here Tughlaqabad fort near Delhi. And also he conquered Madurai and afterwards Warangal, and also maintained law and order in Gujarat and Bengal during his administrative time here. See, these were the important administrative policies of the Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq here. And afterwards, the other important rulers of the Tughlaq dynasty. One is Muhammad bin Tughlaq. One more is Firoz Tughlaq. And they were the other important rulers of Tughlaq dynasty. Who? Muhammad bin Tughlaq and Firoz Tughlaq here. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he was a scholar of Persian and Arabic languages. He known about Persian and Arabic language. He was a scholar in that languages, and also he was expert in maths, physics, medicine, and Persian poetry and astronomy, and also other subjects. He was expert in that subjects also here. So when we come to his administrative reforms, so his administrative reforms also subdivided here. The administrative reforms of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. See, administrative reforms. See, also here divided into revenue reforms. Okay, when we come to his revenue reforms here, see the official here, he brought many of the reforms in the revenue reforms here. See, official records of land was implemented here. What was implemented? The official record of lands was implemented. And next he established the Department of Agriculture, and also he established the Department of Agriculture, and also uncultivable land made cultivable land during this period here. What converted here? Uncultivable land converted into cultivable land here. And also the financial schemes were implemented to help the farmers. What was implemented here? The financial schemes were implemented to help the farmers. And these were the revenue reforms. So next, shifting of his capital. So during his period, he thought to shift his capital here. Where to where means nothing but that is Delhi to Devagiri. Delhi to Devagiri. He thought to shift his capital city from Delhi to Devagiri here. So there were two reasons to thinking about to shift his capital. One reason is to establish the capital city at the center of the vast empire. First reason is here to establish the capital city at the center of the vast empire. And one more is to protect the capital city from the foreign invasions here. Okay, one more reason is here to protect his capital city. Okay, because of this reason he thought to shift his capital city from Delhi to Devagiri here. Okay, the next one is here experiment of symbolic coins. Third, administrative reforms, that is experiment of symbolic coins. During his period, he brought gold coins and afterwards and silver coins into circulation. Gold coin called here dinar and silver coin called here adil. So which one? Dinar and adil. See, these were the two coins. Dinar means it's a gold coin here, adil means it's a silver coin. He brought into circulation during his period. So after a few years, so he brought other coins called here copper coins and afterwards bronze coins also into existence here. But later what happened means, because the treasury, the state treasury became empty. Why means nothing but because of his implements, because of his costly administrative reforms, and afterwards the coins which he brought into existence. Because of all that reasons here, his state treasury became empty. Okay, so these were the highlights of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So one more important ruler of this Tughlaq dynasty, I have already told here, Firoz Tughlaq. Who here? Firoz Tughlaq. He ascended the throne after Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Who ascended the throne after the Muhammad bin Tughlaq means Firoz Tughlaq ascended the throne here. During his period also, he also brought many of the implements here. What was that means nothing but, see, he implemented people-friendly programs here. During his period, he brought people-friendly programs. Next, he wiped off Takkavi loans here. Which one? He wiped off Takkavi loans. Next, he paid compensation to the victims. He also paid the compensation to the victims during his period. And later, the taxes collected and used for irrigation facilities. During his period, the taxes collected by the rich people and also from the farmers, and that used for the what purpose means nothing but for the irrigational facilities. He used it for the irrigational facilities. And also he abolished around 20 different taxes here. And during this period, he abolished nearly 20 different taxes. So later he built many of the cities, mosques and dams and canals during his period. And also he built many of the cities called here Jamapur and Fatehbad, Hissar and Firozpur and Firozabad were built by him during his period. And also he built dharmashalas. What he built here? He built dharmashalas. Why means nothing but for benefit of the travelers. To help the travelers here, he built dharmashalas also during his period here. So these were the highlights of Firoz Tughlaq. So after the Tughlaq dynasty, we are going to study about the Sayyid dynasty here. These were the highlights of Tughlaq dynasty. Now we are going to study about the Sayyid dynasty. The period of Sayyid dynasty was 1414 to 1451 CE. So it was established by, or it was founded by here Khizr Khan. Khizr Khan Sayyid. It was founded by Khizr Khan Sayyid, and he was the governor of Multan. Who was Khizr Khan Sayyid means nothing but he was the founder of Sayyid dynasty, and also he was the governor of Multan here. Okay, he founded this dynasty by conquering Delhi here. Okay, he conquered Delhi and afterwards he established his own dynasty called here Sayyid dynasty here. And during his rule, he established his rule in Doab and Bian and Gwalior places. In that places he established his rule. And also he suppressed many rebellions. Okay, he suppressed many rebellions during his period, and also established law and order in his kingdom here. By suppressing that rebellions, he established law and order in his kingdom. Okay, and who were the other important rulers of this kingdom means nothing but there were three important rulers of this kingdom. One is Muhammad Shah, one more Alauddin, and third important ruler Alam Shah. So they were the other important rulers of Sayyid dynasty. See, but here Alam Shah, he was Muhammad Shah and Alauddin and Alam Shah. Alauddin and Alam Shah here, they were the important rulers of Sayyid dynasty. And here Alam Shah was defeated by whom is nothing but Bahlul Lodi here. Bahlul Lodi. See, Bahlul Lodi defeated Alam Shah. Or Alam Shah was defeated by Bahlul Lodi here, and by defeating Alam Shah, Bahlul Lodi established his own dynasty called here Lodi Dynasty here. Which dynasty? Lodi Dynasty. Then we are going to study now Lodi Dynasty. The Lodi Dynasty, the period of Lodi Dynasty 1451 to 1526 CE. Okay, and who was the founder of this dynasty? Is nothing but Bahlul Lodi. Okay, he was the founder here, and Bahlul Lodi succeeded here. He was succeeded by Sikandar Lodi. During his period also he brought many of the changes, and he was the founder of the Lodi dynasty. Afterwards, who succeeded him is nothing but Sikandar Lodi. During his period, he conquered many of the places called here Bihar, Bengal, and Dholpur, and afterwards Chanderi. So that places he was the places were conquered by Sikandar Lodi here, and also he established peace and order, or law and order in his empire by by conquering all the places, and by bringing many of the changes in his period. He brought peace and order in his kingdom here. So afterwards, Sikandar Lodi is succeeded by whom here? Ibrahim Lodi. So he was succeeded by whom here? Ibrahim Lodi. But Ibrahim Lodi was incompetent. He was incompetent. It means nothing but he was not a capable ruler here. He was not a capable ruler. He was incompetent, and because of that reasons, Babur was invited to India. Who was invited to India here? Babur was invited to India, and by whom is nothing but by Alam Khan, and afterwards Daulat Khan. They were the generals here, and they invited whom here? Babur to India. So Babur invaded on India the year 1526 only, and afterwards there was a battle between Ibrahim Lodi and Babur, and that battle we call here first battle of Panipat. First battle of Panipat. It was happened in the year 1526. In this battle, Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi. By defeating Ibrahim Lodi, he started his own dynasty called here Mughal Dynasty. Then in the 1526 onwards, which dynasty we are going to see in history of India is nothing but that is Mughal Dynasty here. These were the highlights of the Lodi Dynasty. So next we are going to study about the contributions of Delhi Sultans. What were the contributions they gave to India here? The contributions. So their administrative contributions in the administrative sector. Administrative system, what did they contribute? Means nothing but the kingdom was divided into many provinces here. Okay, the administrative system, when we come to administrative system here, the kingdom was divided into many provinces, and the administrative divisions were also headed by here Shikdar, Amin, and afterwards Chowkidars here. And also many of the taxes called here Kharaj, Zakat, Usru, and Kums, and Jajia, import and import tax and house tax were all the main sources of income to the kingdom here. These were all the taxes here, and these taxes they were getting the income to the kingdom here. Okay. So later we come to social system. The social system here, the slavery was in practice here. What was in practice here? The slavery was in practice, and the status of the woman was not healthy during this period here. What was not healthy here? The status of the woman was not healthy during this time, and the parda system and child marriage were in practice. It means nothing but what was in practice during this time is nothing but the parda system and what child marriage were in practice during this period. And also higher social classes, women participated in the fine arts. Higher classes people, they participated in the fine arts, and then rural women participated in the agriculture and also household activities here. The rural woman participated in the household activities and also agriculture here. So these were the highlights of a social system. Next we go to economic system. It's nothing but the old system of tax fixation and revenue collection was changed here. What was changed here in the economic system is the old system of tax fixation and revenue collection was changed here. Next, the mandatory payment of tax. What here? The mandatory payment of tax policy adopted. See, during the rule of sultans here. What mandatory payment of tax was brought or adopted during the rule of sultans. Next, the transport and communication were improved here. What were improved here? The transport and afterwards communication were also improved here. Next, the Indian art crafts entered into the European markets here. What was entered into the European markets means the Indian art crafts entered into the European markets. Okay, these were the highlights of economic system. When we come to their literature, the literature field also they have contributed a lot. What means nothing but many of the authors and historians were under the royal patronage of the sultans. We have already studied here many of the sultans gave patronage to the many of the scholars and poets. Okay. For everyone, historians also they gave the shelter here. And Al-Biruni, who was in the court of Gori, Al-Biruni, who was in the court of Muhammad Gori here, he wrote a book called here Kitab ul Hind. Which one? Kitab ul Hind. Who wrote this book means nothing but Al-Biruni, who was in the court of Gori, he wrote this book. Kitab ul Hind. Next, Hasan Nizami wrote here Tajul Masir. Hasan Nizami wrote Tajul Masir. Next, Minhaj us Siraj wrote here Tabaqat-i-Nasiri. Once again I will repeat. Minhaj us Siraj wrote here Tabaqat-i-Nasiri. Next, Jainuddin Bharani wrote Tariq-i-Frijashani. See, Jainuddin Bharani wrote here Tariq-i-Frijashani, and Firoz Tughlaq wrote here Futuhat-i-Firoz Shahi. Firoz Tughlaq wrote which one? Futuhat-i-Firoz Shahi. And also one more important author called here Amir Khusro. He wrote 6 books. And because of that reason he was called here Indian parrot also here. Who was called Indian parrot means nothing but Amir Khusro was called Indian parrot. These were the highlights of literature. Next we go to their art and architecture. They not only contributed to these systems and literature, they also contributed to art and architecture also here. What did they contribute? Means nothing but see here, sultans introduced a new style of architecture called here Indo-Islamic architecture. See, during their period they introduced Indo-Islamic architecture here. See examples, for example, Qutub Minar and Quwwatul Islam Mosque and Alai Darwaja and Jubaid Khan were all the examples for this Indo-Islamic architecture here, because they introduced that new form of architecture called here Indo-Islamic architecture here. And also the sultans, many of the sultans built forts, okay, mosques and palaces and public buildings and also madrasas and afterwards dharmashalas also. There are many of the sultans built these things also here called forts, mosques and etc. So these were the highlights of the contributions by the Delhi sultans to India here. During their period, they have contributed all those things here. They contributed to administrative system, social system and economic system and the literature part, and also in the art and architecture they have contributed a lot. So this is the lesson called here medieval India and afterwards political transition. Okay, hope you all understood. Okay, thank you.